So if anybody wants to see how it was done, you can look at it. So this person decided to create a homework to not to hide this slider, right? Like we proposed, which is perfectly fine. But he just moved it down and opened the search page. Very nice, very nice. So this was, which one was it? Number 51, I guess. So if you're interested, take a look. Yeah, number 51. Let's take a quick look at number 52. Number 52. This page looks nice. A different effect, see? This person was using different effect. In our case, we were using slide up to hide the carousel. In this case, it's more fancier effect. Is it better? No, I don't know. It's up to you guys. But look at this. So people are playing and having fun, which is great. Oh, what else we have? Number 53. Number 53 looks familiar. First page, let's click on the search. A bit different. Slider doesn't work, but it looks nice. Find now brings me back to the home page. Okay. All right, let's move on, guys. I don't want to spend much time. We have lots of materials to cover over here today. We'll definitely will not be able to finish everything, but you will have a pretty nice direction to get prepared for the consultation. On Thursday. So today I'll give you a big overview of the AngularJS, and we will do definitely 2 walkthroughs. This slide deck that you have has 3 walkthroughs. From the past experience in this group, we didn't have time to do the walkthrough number 3. So what we did in the past, the walkthrough number 3 is covered during the consultation. So the walkthrough number 3 is about running and building the application using tools. So this Thursday during the consultation, Anton will go in details through the walkthrough number 3. But the rest we'll definitely cover today. Walkthrough number 2 today is also going to be long. You will be working 20 minutes on it. And during these 20 minutes, you will recreate the application that you created for this online auction in JavaScript. But now you will create it using Angular. So by the end of the walkthrough number 2, you will have recreated the first 2 pages, feature products, and search using Angular. So you will have a big chunk of hands-on work today. Do you have any general questions regarding the training? Is material clear? Do you want to improve something so we can accommodate your request? Can you please type in the chat? I'll keep watching. I'm sure that some of you believe that there is too much of materials already. If you believe that it's too much, just say so. It doesn't mean that we'll give you less, but I want to see if there is somebody who thinks that the amount of materials is unbearable. All right, so can we peek into the solution of each other's when the homework is done? Of course, you guys we are publishing all these homeworks right there. And if you want to peek, it's pretty easy to peek. For example, I don't know who is this person, but if I want to see how it was done, right? Nobody stops me from entering view, developer tools, right? And I'm right here. I am in the source code of this guy, of this person. So I can see everything. I can see, this is a page, right? When you will see scripts, you will see the scripts over here. All CSS, everything is here. So yes, sure, you can check. You can check any homework that is published. If anybody doesn't want to share, which would be strange, let me know and I won't share. It's pretty easy. Okay, so let's start. AngularJS. First, I will give you a quick overview of the frameworks. Then I'll make sure that we all understand what is a single page application in general, and then we'll go to AngularJS. First question is, why use frameworks in general? If you can write everything in JavaScript. The thing is that JavaScript as a language is not productive. What do I mean by this? I mean that if you are used to developing in Java, for example, which you are, then you have a lot of help with compiler. It's pretty productive and pretty fast to develop code, of course, if you know how to code. Not in JavaScript. The second major thing is that when you develop in Java, you know your JVM. You know where you're going to deploy, and you know that your code will definitely work in this JVM. Not in JavaScript. In JavaScript, the web applications can be used by users in different browsers, different versions. So, are you sure that your code will work? Maybe a particular browser does not implement or didn't implement some features yet of HTML5, maybe some tags, maybe JavaScript support is not exactly the same. So the frameworks in JavaScript world will hide from you, if not all, but most of the discrepancies in the browsers. So the framework usually has some provisions inside to see, oh, I am in Firefox, so I need to use, for example, these styles in CSS should be prefixed with some specific prefix and so on. They suggest you a structure, how to structure your application. They may propose an MVC paradigm, model view controller. They may say this is how you should split the code. We have services here, we have models here, we have controllers there. They may come with a rich library of components that HTML doesn't offer, but they did. So all these things will help you to be more productive than writing in a pure JavaScript. On the other hand, how do you know if this particular framework that you decided to select or your managers decided to select is right? First of all, there are frameworks and there are libraries. What's the difference? A library is a set of maybe components, maybe utilities, maybe a combination of the two that allows you to make a certain piece of your application better. For example, it can offer you modularization, right? For example, a require.js library. It just does one thing. It allows you to create an application that will consist of modules, and it allows you to specify dependency between these modules. That's require.js. That's a library. jQuery is a library. jQuery allows you, for example, better searching in the DOM tree. jQuery, core jQuery serves as a foundation for multiple different libraries. For example, Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a library. I don't know if even if they call it framework, it is a library. A library based on jQuery, which allows you to use nicer components which are resizable and responsive. So a library does certain things, but a library does not force you to structure an application a specific rigid way. It'll help you in some areas. Maybe you want charting. Go and find a charting library and add it to your code. But the frameworks typically have more features and they impose the structure of the application on you. Some of the frameworks are heavier. When I say heavier, I mean they have a lot of code. Some of them are lighter. And when I say lighter again, they have less code. And when you deploy an application, they add smaller portion of the bytes that that increase the total size of your application. See, some lightweight frameworks can offer only ability to split your code into model view controllers, nice binding between the model and the view, and they also offer a routing. For example, if the user click on this button, show that page, or the fragment of the page. If they click on that link, show the other fragment of the page. The question was, can we say if a framework is a superset of the library? In a way, yes. A framework may consist of different libraries, but a framework is like a costume that you have to wear. While a library, I would say it's like an accessory, a watch. If you want, you can put on a watch. If you want to, you can put on a ring. But they don't force you to wear this costume of the astronaut. Otherwise, you won't do anything. Feature complete frameworks. When I say feature complete, you just think heavy. These are the guys. Sencha, XJS, it's big. It offers you MVC, binding, routing, automation of simplification of Ajax framework. They created their own classes, so you can program in classes with extend, with inheritance, even though it's not a part of the JavaScript language. They have excellent charting. They have very nice data grid, which is very important for enterprise applications. So all these things can be useful for somebody. For whom? For whom? For a person who doesn't care about the size of the application. If you are developing an application for the back office, when I say back office, I mean you are an enterprise developer and you are planning to run this application within the company on the excellent network, right? You know that your clients, not clients, users are sitting in the same building or within the same company on a fast network. You don't care if the application, the size of the application that gets into the browser is 300 kilobytes or maybe it's 3 megabytes. Who cares? You want all features. You want it nice and rich and beautiful. Then go ahead and use these big guys. But if you will decide to use one of these big guys, you need to understand, or when you will decide to pick a library, you also need to ask yourself. Actually, let me rephrase the question. What do you guys think? What's the first thing that you need to figure out when you start driving a car? Say there's a car and you're studying how to drive a car. What is the important thing to figure out first? Excellent. Brakes. Ruslan is right. Brakes. How to stop a car. If you don't, you may not know how to turn on the blinker, but if you don't know how to stop a car, you are in big trouble. The same with frameworks. If I made a mistake and I picked a wrong framework, how easy it is to get rid of it. With large frameworks like these, Sencha, YUI, actually YUI even stopped development, so it was a Yahoo framework, and now I think they announced it's gone. Dojo. So if you started to use one of these frameworks, and 6 months down the road you decided, oh, I made a mistake, it's not a good framework for me. It's not easy. Trust me, it is not easy to get rid of it. You are drowning in these frameworks. Your code is, this framework is very intrusive. It's like a sprout. It's everywhere in your code. So remove it is pretty difficult. So just keep this in mind when you will make a selection. When you are selecting a framework, ask yourself a question. If I made a mistake, is it easy to replace it with something else? So feature complete frameworks are typically not easy to get rid of. The question was, what's the difference between XJS and AngularJS and the extra widgets? Definitely. First of all, when you will start writing in XJS, for example, no, there is no HTML. The only HTML file that you will have will be like this big, 10 lines of code that will immediately connect to a class. They have a concept of classes in Sencha, and that's it. The rest is written in JavaScript. There is no component in HTML. Everything is there, replaced by them. They have excellent GUI components, of course, but it's written in their way. If you will decide to use responsive, till the version 5, I think they wouldn't allow you to do this, responsive design. If you use, so basically, they have a lot of stuff, but they will tell you how to write your code. In case of Angular, for example, it's one of the lightweight frameworks. You still have HTML, and you will put in certain places in the HTML tags, you will put so-called attributes, right? And just by adding one little thing I'll show you today, all of a sudden your HTML is smarter. If you don't want it, just get rid of it. If you don't want to manage the entire web application, the front end, with Angular, fine, just select one div and say, only this div on the page will be controlled by Angular. The rest is regular HTML. You made a mistake? Remove it. So, lightweight frameworks allow you to write less code. Heavy frameworks give you a lot of features, but they will ask you to write more code. So, lightweight frameworks, there's a bunch of them on this slide. Knockout, AngularJS, Ember, Backbone, these are lightweight frameworks. They help you with MVC. What kind of help you need with MVC? It is useful to know that there is an easy way to say that whenever I type something on this text field in the HTML page, all of a sudden a variable in the model somewhere in the back is modified. Or if somebody modifies that variable in the code, maybe the server side gives us a new value. Boom, the UI is changed automatically. It's binding. These frameworks allow you to easily specify that this view, this portion of the view is controlled by a class, which we call controller, right? MVC, model view controller. And that controller is configured. They support routing in a simple way. You can specify if the URL contains the word search, then it should open up the content for the search page. Like with your auction. With this homework that you did, you had to go through some pain, obviously, to figure out how to do this, how to replace only this portion of the page and not the whole thing. Only a section of the page which initially showed the featured products, and now it shows the search page, right? In Angular, it's a piece of cake. You specify routing and you configure if this element, if the URL contains this fragment, this pattern, then that div will be replaced with the other div. You don't need to hide, you don't need to show, you don't need to clean the entire HTML from the div like we did this past week. It's easy. It is easy. Because that's why they are more popular for most applications, I would say. And that's why they are easier to learn. They don't force you to change the way you perceive the web application. So, but of course, if you will say, I want to have a beautiful data grid, Angular, do you have a beautiful data grid? The answer is no. Go ahead and check, maybe third-party libraries are there. Maybe some people created a grid that is good enough for you. That's it. If you'd be sticking to the heavyweight XJS, the grid is there, really powerful grid. Maybe if you're writing the application that is heavily relying on grids and charts, enterprise application, go with the XJS. So it's not like I'm saying you develop with Angular. No. you have your own reason to join this class, right? For the most part, it is popular and there are jobs out there, and your market value would grow if you would add Angular to your tool set that you know. That's true. And why fight it? It is really nice framework. Now let's switch for a moment to this topic called single page application. And by the way, Angular is pretty nice fit for so-called SPA, single page application. So what is a single page application? It's an application that you start a page and you stay on it. You open up a web page and you stay on it. It's not like you open page 1 and then you click on the button, then you go to page 2 and then page 3 and then a pop-up. No. You open a page, you stay on the page. So what's happening? There is no full page reload, right? Only certain portion of the page are replaced. For example, you are looking at a page that is showing you price quotes from the stock exchange. You look at this page and only this little portion is changing, right? Only the digits, the price is changing as people are buying and selling shares. So the entire page is not updated, right? Only this portion. Or maybe that portion, or maybe this portion. But the page stays the same. So the page is loaded initially, and then separate requests are made to the server to bring or update different portion of the page. These requests could be done with AJAX, or they could be done with the WebSocket. One way or the other. But this is today's way of updating the portions of the page. What else is important? The state of the page doesn't get reset. What do I mean by this? The state of the page. If, say, page A, say you're buying a book on a bookstore site on Amazon.com, you decided to add a book to a shopping cart, right? And then you want to go to continue shopping. You want to maybe add another book to the shopping cart. So what is in the shopping cart now? It is a state of the page, right? So what you can do, you can declare a variable that belongs to the entire one and only page, call it shopping cart, add stuff there, but let the user move around the page and keep adding stuff. So you can keep the state. Whereas if you would be using old-fashioned multi-page web application, then you will have a first page, right? Then even if you will have some variables on the front, on the JavaScript, like a shopping cart, if you will do a second page, if you will reload the second page from the server, you lost the state, right? All this JavaScript gets reloaded, HTML gets reloaded, the variables are gone. So what did we do? We keep the state on the server, right? So if I added a book to the shopping cart, I make a request to the server. On the server, in your Java code, you can obviously maintain session object, and you can arrange the shopping cart over there and do stuff. But with a single page application, you can keep state on the front because it doesn't get reset. And obviously, the user get a feel that it's a desktop application because it's not like page after page after page. It's not all this rosy because there are some deficiency in single page application, in particular, search engine optimization. It may suffer. If you have a regular multi-page website, you have pages full of content. If something comes on the front page, all these feature products, they are there physically. All the data are weaved into the HTML, correct? So but what about the search page, the second page that you created at home for the application? It was an AJAX call, right? Initially, the data, the wording that may exist on the second page, it was not over here. It was not loaded initially, right? What if the user will never click on the button search? There is no such a page. Why? Because behind the search there is an AJAX request that's supposed to go somewhere, and somewhere the server will get the data and return JSON. It's separate, right? So all these crawlers that are crawling the pages, trying to create indexes, so the search engine knows where your page belongs. They have tougher time to figure out what is the content of this page. Theoretically, they are supposed to go and imitate clicks on every button and execute every AJAX request and then index it. Practically, it's not happening. So there are special tricks. Maybe today I'll tell you how this thing works. I think we have a slide somewhere at the back. People create so-called static snapshots. If you want, you can Google up static snapshots for the web pages, for the single page applications. So they create a single page application for the users. On the other hand, they create special snapshots filled with data, with text. So when the crawler comes in, they feed a different page to the crawler, so the crawler can index the content properly on your website. And if you will look at this beautiful page, Gmail was one of the first single page applications around. Look at it. Everybody saw this page. So what do we see over here? Up on top, you have some header over here. It's a static information that may not need to be changed. Actually, even this is not true, because over here you may have like little red notification that somebody wants something from you on the Google+. On the left-hand side, this page is static. These are all the folders that you have, the incoming folder. But this section, say it's a div, right? This is something dynamic. This thing keeps changing. As soon as somebody will send you a message, boom, you see something over here, you see a new message over there, right? So technically, this is a single page application. And if we want to use Angular, for example, to develop a page like this or the application like this, we want to be able to control only a portion of the web application. Only this portion. If I believe that Angular is great, I should be able to say, dear Angular, see this div? It's yours. Leave the rest alone. You don't want to even mess around with that. It's a static page, don't bother. This is our section. This is what will be changing all the time. Coming back to your homework, it's exactly okay. In this case, we have the email list, the content of my inbox, for example, with the homeworks that you've been working on last week. You have a section which shows either the featured products or the search page content, right? So technically, you want to have one page with replaceable pluggable divs, so to speak. So this is what we will address this week, this coming week, but Angular will help you out with that. The question was, will SPA apps become slower through time since the sections of the DOM are replaced, increasing the memory till it holds? First of all, I don't think so. The thing is that there are different techniques that try to minimize the DOM access. Actually, the statement is correct. DOM is a major bottleneck for the web application. Initially, when the browsers were created, nobody even had a clue that 20 years from that time, people will do such a crazy things with the web application. Initially, it was supposed to have like a dozen of components on the page, maybe it's 3 dozens, and that's it. Nobody would write programs trying to manipulate these components back then in the mid-90s. Right? So DOM remains slow. There are different techniques that people are trying to use. One of them is called so-called shadow DOM. They want to recreate a copy of DOM in memory and work with it, so to leave alone the main DOM. The other thing is getting popular, so-called reactive programming. There is a framework called React.js. React.js. They mimic the DOM on the back. They create a hierarchy in memory in JavaScript that looks like a DOM. And if you want to change something, you modify that structure, that data structure in memory. I mean, the React.js modifies it. And that React.js knows that if several nodes were modified in memory, maybe it makes sense to batch them and update the DOM in one shot. So people are using different techniques, so I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. I mean, DOM is a problem, but frameworks are finding ways to deal with that. Single page application done professionally have such feature as modularization. So you can cut your application into pieces. One module is loaded from one file, JavaScript file. The other is from the other. If the user will never click on the button search, you will never load the module that is responsible for search. Like, for example, today, closer to the end of the lesson, I'll tell you how the routing works. At least I will give you an overview. But a routing feature is not implemented in core AngularJS library. So what if you don't need routing? Fine, then don't add this portion for the application. Controllers is the central point that manipulate DOM and makes requests to the server using Ajax or WebSocket. HTML templating, of course, should be a part of the single-page application, and I showed you during that consultation on Thursday how to use handlebars, right? Yes, real-time communications and using the local storage. HTML5 introduced an API, so you can save a lot of data on the client's machine, not as cookies, but right in the database, the local database. So if you want to read more about single-page applications, I'll link you there. Any questions before we move on? You keep typing if you want, and let's go to this page real quick. AngularJS. By the way, this morning, I don't know if you got that email. Yesterday I sent you the handout, but this morning I woke up early and I made some slight corrections here and there. So please use the slides and the HTML for the workflow number 2, the one that I sent you like 2 hours before the class. Okay, so this is the site for AngularJS. This is where you can get it from. The current version is 1.3. What they do, they have huge plans. The Angular team, they are releasing version 2, which will be a complete rewrite, and they promise that it won't be compatible with Node AngularJS, or it may not be compatible. The good news, it's not happening soon. The very, very early release of Angular 2 will be done in May. They promise to do it in May. If they will do it in May, then we'll probably teach this, we'll modify this training maybe 6-8 months from now. But what else they said, since the AngularJS is so popular, they will continue working on this line of product. So working on the Angular 2 is a parallel work, but they will keep updating this version. So this is the site where you can get it from. In our case, for this training, we already give you the JavaScript file, which contains Angular. In the handout that we are sending, you already have that file. But obviously, you're welcome, or more than welcome, to download AngularJS from here and use your version. There are resources, videos, trainings. You can go there and obviously read all that. And there's documentation on API and everything. So you can find everything on Angular over there. Okay, is SPA good for enterprise application? Of course, SPA is good for any application. Having said that, I can also tell you that my colleague in our company works on a monitor which is like 50-inch monitor. He is a lead developer on the application for insurance agents. And that particular application has lots of different forms. And insurance agent wants to be able to see as many forms as possible because they understand what these forms mean. So he showed me how that application can open up like 20 different windows. 20. That's why he has this huge 50-inch monitor. And according to him, it makes sense to the insurance agent. So that's the case when he would argue saying that I cannot live with single-page application. There are different cases. A good Angular book for newbies. Angular for hipsters, I believe. Angular for hipsters. Probably. During the break, I'll check. I have some books. I bought some books in the past, so I can tell you, answer better this question. With Angular, you don't need handlebars because this part is already in there. So you have already template in there in Angular, and you will be using it even, I believe, today or this week. No, Angular is not radically different from 1.0. No, 1.3 is not radically different. They keep working in the area of scopes to improve, to make it simpler, but other than that, no. Okay, so we are starting with Angular then. Next. Pros and cons. I already mentioned that pros is a good fit for single-page application. MVC is done for you. There's a recommended way of splitting the code into views, HTML, controllers, JavaScript, and the models. Also, you will have JavaScript objects with some variables in there. And binding is done nicely. Easy routing, so you can configure routing saying if the URL contains this fragment, use this fragment of the page. If the URL contains that page fragment, use that fragment of the page. So you create pieces of HTML that you could have done for your application for the online option. Feature product, fragment, a div. Search product, a div. And routing is easily specified. And there is more than one way to do that. It's lightweight, so you can get rid of it relatively easy if you believe that it was the wrong choice for you. And the other pro is that it's developed by Google, which is not only a pro, but is, in my opinion, the only con that it's developed by Google. Google is known for just dropping the software as they please. Google has their own business, how they make money, search, advertising, maybe some Android, maybe some hosting for the web services. But this is pretty much it. The rest is like a side project for them. They are known for dropping the software when they don't need it anymore. The latest one is Google Code. I was teaching another training, and I published all my slides, all the code samples on Google Code. It was like 5 years ago. The last week they said, no more. We'll give you 7 months and then we'll shut it down. We are turning the light off. Thank you very much. So now I need to spend time, download my stuff and find a different storage for that and so on. Not nice. So what if they will drop Angular? They may, but it's a bit too late in the game because it became so popular and it's open source, so I don't think they can kill it, even if they want. No more. This Frankenstein is already out there. So let's move on. What can be better than a well done hello world, right? We all like hello world applications. And let's look at it. The only difference over here, you see, it's a standard HTML file. The only difference here is that there is this weird thing in the bottom. The rest is HTML. And over here at the bottom, we are adding AngularJS. This is a framework. This is a file that you need for development. So if you want to turn a hello world into the Angular control application, just add this little line. Is this enough? Or is this the right file to add? It may be the right file. It may be enough. It may not be enough. First of all, when you just add AngularJS, it means that you add the core Angular library. The core meaning it doesn't support routing. It supports MVC. You can specify controllers. You can use scopes. You can specify models, views, but there's no routing. Do you need routing? I don't know. Maybe you don't need routing. Then that's all that you need. Does this hello world need routing? No. It's the only hello world page. So that's all we have. If you would need more, then you would have more lines like this. For example, routing Angular, we would add another JavaScript file. And there is a library with tons of modules. We call them modules that you could have added to the HTML application. Now, what is that thing? That weird thing in blue? It means that we want our hello world to be controlled by Angular. NGApp is one of the directives that come with Angular. And the whole idea of Angular is you take HTML that you know and you add some attributes to the well-known standard HTML tag. What is going to do for you? Oh, now we need to learn something, right? But you will be adding these attributes here and there, and this is how you will control your application. Let's go where? I didn't even start my IntelliJ IDEA. Let me start IntelliJ IDEA. I'll show you this hello world in action. As you remember, I told you that with Angular, you can specify which part of the HTML you want to control. Remember, I showed you that slide with Gmail. We don't want to control the entire page, only the portion that is changing should be controlled. This is something that you also have, guys. I sent you yesterday the handout, right? So what you will need to unzip your handout. And actually, when you will be working on workflow number 1, you will do this. So for now, don't get distracted. Just look at the screen. You will have a chance to do this, and you will get the same exact content as I do. It's not even walkthrough 1. It's just a hello world HTML. Let's look at it. So I've added Angular, which is right there, and I have hello world. Now, if I will run or open it in the browser, by the way, guys, when you will create a new project from the handout, create a folder, or actually unzip the handout, go to IntelliJ IDEA, say File, New Project, and create it in the same folder, that project. Because you may run into issue when the project is in one place and you want to import a module, which is this. From the other place, you may get some 404, which I also got yesterday, for example, because I didn't put everything in one. Great. So anyway, so that's the hello world, right? So what do you think if I will open up the hello world with this HTML? Will it look special? And the answer is no. It won't look special. Why? Because I didn't use anything from Angular yet. Yes, of course, I've added the directive over here. All right, so because of that, the browser, we call it bootstrapped, loaded into memory the entire AngularJS, ready to go on alert. Just tell me what to do. And this is what we didn't say. So we only said that this is an application that will be handled by Angular. Let me do this thing. Let me remove it from here. Let me put it right there. Can I do this? Why not? So what did I just do? Can I run it actually? Right click, open in browser. Works the same way. So what does it mean? It means that Angular is pretty flexible. That you can say this container, which is div in my case now, is controlled by Angular. And what about this guy? It doesn't control. It's not controlled by Angular. If you want to use other framework for that, go ahead and do this. It would be strange, but you got the point. Somebody has issues with audio. Let me disconnect and reconnect the mic. Just wait a second. I reconnected the microphone. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it helps. So Javier, is this better now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Javier? By the way, if somebody has issues with the sound, I have Skype up and running. So if you want, you can become my contact, and I can turn on Skype, so you will get the audio through Skype. If somebody has serious issues, you shouldn't be having, but you never know. So you got my point, right? So you can say to Angular, please control just a section of my code. Now the big picture. MVC, how MVC works in Angular. First of all, you already saw a little thingy just now. See this ngF. The whole container of your choice, whatever you like, becomes the Angular controlled application. NG, they use this prefix in many cases. It's for Angular. NG something. So ngF is your friend. Like in my case over here, where is it? ngF in my case is this guy. This is my ngF. All right. Now, inside that container, I have other plates, and they are model, view, controller. Of course, you know the MVC pattern, but let me explain you how it works in Angular in particular. What the user sees. The user sees what is displayed on the view. So the view is for user to see and for user to interact with the application. When the user will click on a button on the application, what happens? We say that the user initiates the action on the screen. So what the view will do, the view will inform the controller. And here's an important thing. The controller does not update anything on the view. The controller is just sitting there. Oh, somebody clicked on the button. View told the controller, somebody clicked on the button. Go to that URL. Boom. So what controller can do? Controller can call services to perform some functions, or controller can modify the data on the model. So the ng model is the way in Angular how you can define a model. You can say the model for my application is an object called product, which consists of so many fields like product name, description, bid, price. That's the model, the data in memory. If something is changing on the product, on one of these attributes, we want to make sure that the changes are displayed on the view. And this is the beauty of binding. So the model is bound to the view. So you in the code, will not touch neither here nor there. You will not touch the view. In the view, you will specify the binding. First of all, you can specify the binding with ng model in the view, saying that that is your model. The other thing that you can do, you can specify, you can use these curly braces, double curly braces, to specify what you want to show over here. So technically, over here, you'll specify in curly braces. You can specify somewhere product name, description, bid, and price, whatever. And as soon as the product name changes here, boom, binding is automatically updated the script. So you're, again, the main takeaway from this slide is controller doesn't change the view. When you will be writing scripts, you will not be changing the view. What you will be doing in your scripts, you will update the model. The model is bound to the view, and that's why the user will see the changes. And in Angular, they implemented it as a two-way binding. So whatever I type in the screen is bound to the model, and immediately, boom, it goes to the variable. There's a field product name, that value has changed, done. No coding is required to move the data from UI to the model. And on the way back, the same story. That's why we call it two-way binding. So whenever you change the product name over there programmatically, and it was bound, it was used in an expression in double curlies on the view is refreshed. The other important concept from this slide is that there is something called scope, dollar scope in this case. It's a little confusing area in Angular, but you'll get it, hopefully. By the way we structure this training today, I'll give you a big overview, plus you will be running a walkthrough number 2 in particular that will technically create a website that you've been working on last week. I will introduce you to different concepts like directives, what else, routing, filters, but the other 2 sessions that you have on Angular with Anton, he will drill down, and he's a great master of Angular. He will drill down and explain you every little detail on everything. So if I will introduce you to controllers in a short form today, next week Anton will give you a better idea of how this works. So first of all, scope. So obviously we are Java programmers, and we understand that if I have a variable, this variable may be visible right here in the code, or it may not be visible, depending on the scope, depending on where I am. Same thing with Angular. In Angular, there is such a thing called global scope, $global scope. But beside global scope, there could be smaller scope. So the global scope is the entire universe of my application, while the global scope could be like one section of the code in a particular area. So it's a hierarchy. But for now, just remember. So if you create a model variable, a model object, or maybe just separate variables, product name, description, bid, and price, they are not created somewhere in the global area. They are always a part of some scope. So if you cannot access the variable bid, apparently you created it in the wrong scope, or maybe you need to write a code. You need to ask Angular to pass to your controller the right scope, and then it will be visible. Just keep this in mind. And on the right-hand side, now you see this blue or bluish box for services. Obviously, we are creating the front end with MVC, but we also want to be able to make some requests to the servers to get some data and so on. So in particular, Angular comes with a special object called HTTP with $. So if you want to make an AJAX request, like GET request to somewhere, you can say $HTTP.get. The other thing that I didn't mention, but I will, and you will have detailed description next week, or maybe the week after, dependency injection. It is also part of the Angular. So if you need, for example, if I want to make requests and I need the HTTP object, Angular will inject the reference into your code. So you will never need to create a new object like HTTP. Do you have questions, guys? Do you have questions so far? All right, I don't see any questions, so let's move on. Well, please do me a favor. Just enter dash if you don't have questions, so I see that you are there. Cool, you are there. 1 hour into a lesson and people are still there. Nice. Now create another app. Let's look at the other application that Angular controls, and this will be a part of your walkthrough number 1, which you will start working on in a couple of minutes. So this is an HTML file, right? Standard HTML file. So what it has, in this case, we put ng-app directive right on top, saying that the entire, this super duper complicated page will be controlled by Angular. Right? So that's basically, we are saying that the scope for this Angular application is the whole page. What else we have in here? Body is the title of the page. Simple HTML for now. Body, paragraph, standard HTML, input field, standard HTML, of type text, and all of a sudden, we've added an attribute to a standard HTML element. The attribute is called ngMod. What does it mean? Remember I told you about two-way binding. So this is binding, so to speak, one way, from UI to the model. I'm saying whatever will be typed into this text must automatically jump and be assigned to something called message. What is message? I don't know. A variable. A variable. Did you create a variable? No. Did I create this variable? No. Who did? Nobody. Angular will do it automatically for you. You can put any weird word over here, and Angular will understand, oh, they want me to create a model object, which will be represented by a variable named message in this case. You can call it Mary if you want. Fine. So this is how, so one line of binding is done. From UI to the model. No need to do anything else. As soon as you type something in the text, it's already assigned to the variable called message. Now the other way, binding the other way, from the model to the UI. Over here, I have another paragraph, right? In bold, which is strong. What do I do here? Message, which is the same variable, but I put it in double curly braces. Curly, curly. This is binding expression. This is a syntax for binding expression from the model to the view. So what does it mean? It means over here in this paragraph, the value of the variable message should be A, displayed, and B, instantaneously updated if its value changes. See? A, displayed, and B, updated all the time. Think of this price quote from the stock exchange, right? If you wanted to create something like this. If you have a server side that pushes the prices to your beautiful Java application, and if you have a way to a Java application, for example, using WebSockets to push the data to the front end and change the value of the variable message, boom, the user would see the price quote immediately. Constant updates of the UI. And you don't need to write a code to update the UI. You need to write a code to update the variable. That's all. The rest is done by binding. And finally, we are linking the Angular for all this magic to work, for the browser to know what is that ng-app and what is this ng model and what are these stupid curlies. You need to add a library. So when the page is loaded, Angular gets loaded in the global space where the rest of your JavaScript is sitting. And technically, Angular creates only one global variable called Angular. So if you want to get inside Angular and use the API, you can always refer angular.something. But also, since it's already in memory, it understands what is ngApp and what is ngModel and what are the curly braces. And I'll show you in a clear way at the end of the walkthrough number 1. I'll show you how this works. Questions? Syntax is similar. Yes, handlebar. Anton, thank you for your help. Okay. Is there any message as well meant to ask if double parentheses? No, there is no such as message in single parentheses. No, there is only one variable called message, and two curlies means binary. And now the time has come for you to let me drink some coffee and enjoy my life for 5 minutes while you are working hard on walkthrough number 1. So basically, the goal of your walkthrough number 1 is exactly the same thing. See this step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. When you will import the handout that I sent you yesterday, right? You're going to have this walkthrough number 1. Exactly what you see on the slide, but it's empty. You will need to type in ngApp, curly braces, this and that. Now, in here, we also have a solution for those of you who have tough time figuring out how to do the walkthrough. There is already a version which is done. So W1 HTML is already done for you. For people who don't want to work, I'm not blaming anybody. Maybe some people are just happy with browsing the code instead of doing step by step. But I assume that you will do step by step. Step 1, add Angular dependency. Means that you need to add script AngularJS. AngularJS is right there. And so you can pick, of course, in the solution if you want. So I put myself on pause, the camera, so I can drink coffee, and in 5 minutes we will continue. And please, as usual, when you're done, please enter the word done in the chat room. I'll wait like another 30 seconds. Maybe someone else will finish. Okay, let's move on. I want to quickly review the code and show you something else. So I'll open the solutions. All this is done like in slide. Right click, open in a browser, and if you type over here, it's immediately shown right there. See, binding in action, two-way binding from you to model and from model to view. If I wanted to do the same thing in pure JavaScript, look at what I would need to do. I would need to try to find the element by ID. For example, in this case, I gave ID input field in the DOM. Then I will need to write the code to find the element somewhere else. In this case, in the span area. And then I would need to add up to create an event listener for key up when the finger goes up from the keyboard. And when the event happens, this function should be invoked, and the value from the input field should be assigned to the inner HTML of this area. On the next slide shows you how to compare the files. See, I selected two files, and I can select over here compare two files to see the difference. On the right hand side is the JavaScript version of the file, on the left hand side is Angular version. As you can see, the Angular is shorter and simpler to write. Also, I want to show you a couple of other little things, little versions of this application. Look at this. Over here in this version that you just did, you declare the variable message. And you can say, what if I need to store information about a product, for example, which has multiple properties, name, price, weight, height, or whatever. So no one stops you from creating an object the same way. See, I just said I want to have my data as a model. And in particular, my data should have a property message. Remember, JavaScript is a loosely typed language. So what Angular will see? Oh, they want my data. Is there such an object, my data? No. Let me create an object. Oh, they want a property message. Is there such an object property declared somewhere? No. Let me create it. On the other hand, nobody stops you from adding your script that will actually create an object with which will be named my data. So you can use dot notation and access particular properties from your model, which will be represented in this case with my data. If you will run the second version, and of course over here you need to use my data.message. It will work exactly the same way. Right? Now, and the third little version of this application, I want to demonstrate it. Look at this. In the first version, we had, in line number 4, we had ngApp up there saying, I want to control the whole page. I want Angular to control the whole page. But in this case, I moved it on purpose. I created a div, and I moved it right there in the div. So only this div is controlled by Angular now. And look at this. I just copied this line down below, over here, under the div. This P paragraph, right, is not controlled by Angular. Right? And let's see what happens. Open it in the browser. Oops. See? This part still works, but this doesn't. Why? Because regular HTML, which is not controlled by the browser, by the Angular, doesn't understand this. It assumes that it's just a text. See? So you can you can have a control in a fine-grained manner. So Angular can control just a little part of your code. All right. Any questions on these two? Let's move on. Walkthrough already done. This is done. Players in AngularJS, major players, so to speak. Modules, controllers, directives, filters, binding expression. Module. Each application consists of one or more modules, which means that whatever you put over here is a module. In this case, I didn't give it a name. I didn't name it in any way. But the ngApp has a syntax that allows you to specify a name. So a module can be named. So your Angular application has at least one module, which we had now. So when you will be writing code for modules, you will say create a module for me, name it so and so and so, or find the module by name. Then you will tell to the module, hey module, your controller is this function. You will write a JavaScript function that will serve as a controller for the module, right? Accordingly, you can have multiple modules on the page, and each module can have its own controller. So I can have div and another div. This is one module, this is another module, and each of them has separate controller. Controller is a function in JavaScript. Controller is a place to handle user interactions. So whatever user will do on the screen, and whenever they press a button, a link, a checkbox, if you want to react somehow, you need to start this reaction in the controller function, whatever you assign. So far we didn't use any controllers. Directives. Directives are these little things like ngApp or ngModel, which add some new capabilities for standard HTML elements. Or they actually can be written as new elements in Angular brackets. Or they can even be written to change the behavior of the CSS. But let's not worry about it for now. Filters. Format the expressions value. In this particular case, I wanted to display the message over here as is. The same exact value as in variable message I wanted to display on the screen. But what if I wanted to display this message in uppercase characters? Even though the original message is in upper and lowercase characters. So you can create a filter to massage the data before you show them on the view. So these are the filters. Can you create module on the fly? Yes, you can. You can. And you will see a syntax soon. Binding expression. Again, in this case, binding expression is expression that you place inside the double curly braces. In this case, I just put a variable name, but nothing stops me from making from writing an expression over here. Maybe a message concatenated with something and then turned into an uppercase. So it's a binding expression. It doesn't have to be just a variable. This expression will be evaluated before being displayed on the screen, on the view. Now let's go one by one. So these players one by one. And again, I am giving you the high-level overview of all these, so you'll have an idea how they work. And next two sessions, next two Saturdays, we will be drilling down, and so you may see some repeats, but you will be drilling down into in depth. Modules. Modules help avoiding monolithic applications, which means that you can split or decompose your application into different parts. Create a module, give it a name, and use it whenever you want. Even Angular itself is split into modules. And see, there is a link over here. So if we go to that page, which is on the different screen, see? All these are modules for different purposes. Angular UI has a module, file upload, bootstrap, translate. So there are tons and tons of modules created by somebody, either by Angular team or by somebody else. See? For example, this is grid. It's a module. If you want to use it. The point is that the whole application is modular. So AngularJS, I already mentioned that. When you add this file to your HTML page, you are adding just the core Angular functionality. Just the core. If you want to add something else, like in walkthrough number 3, which most likely we will not be able to finish today, it's about routing. Routing is a separate module, routing-Angular. If you want to use routing in your application, you will add routing as well, as a separate module. One more thing, it's a bit early to mention, but in some cases, and probably next week you already see the examples which will add instead of Angular.js, you will see something like Angular.min.js. This is a minimized version of Angular. So typically, when you want to deploy your application in production, you want to make sure that this piece is as small as possible. So Angular.min.js is a special version of Angular which looks like a one super duper long line. No line breaks, the variables may be shorter and so on. No spaces, just to minimize the amount. So it's a typical situation for all JavaScript frameworks. You need to, before going to production, you need to run it through some minimizer. Minimizers, there are other tools called uglifier to make it more difficult to read because it's still the source code and so on. Now, modules also allow you to specify dependencies. For example, if you'll be adding a routing module for Angular, routing module may depend on existence of some other module in memory. So when you will be creating a module, you will specify a name of the module, and then in brackets, you will specify a list of other modules that are dependencies. So this module, when it will be loaded, it will check the list of all dependencies and load them also to make sure it works fine. Modules can be loaded in any order, right? And let's look at the usages, how you create a module. For example, this is how, remember I told you that Angular, when it's loaded, or when, again, as I usually like to say, when the browser bootstraps the Angular in memory, it'll create one global variable called Angular. And you can access all the API through that variable. For example, let's see. I want to create a new module. It's a JavaScript code, of course. So it'll create a module with a name. I wanted to name option. And then let me put it properly. If I create a module from scratch, first thing, I must use brackets. They are empty, as you see over here, but this is a place to specify dependencies. So if I would have some dependencies, I would list them over here. But even if I don't have any dependencies, which is the case, the very fact that I put a second argument, which is empty brackets, means that I am creating a module with a name option. If somewhere else I want to access this module from the code, I will use this almost the same syntax, but please note, there is no bracket, no second argument. So this means that I am not creating a module, but I am accessing a module that somewhere else was created. All right, important. So first creation, you must have square brackets, even if you don't have any dependence. This means create a module. Later, to access the module, just specify its name if you are sure that it's already created in another script. Here's an example with dependencies. I want to create a module named auction, but it needs to use routing capabilities of Angular. So I'm saying in square brackets, so my auction depends on ng-route. It means that Angular is supposed to load first ng-route in memory and then create the module auction for me. ng-route is a variable name from another module, which is correct. Look at this. The last line in the module. This is another module. This is a module that supports routing. So if you will add this line to your HTML file, then you can use ng-route. So it'll know what it is. Now let's look at some code which has both HTML and JavaScript. So just a little change over here. If in the first walkthrough we used ng-app without any name, now we decided to call our module auction. Actually, no. The truth of the matter is that the very fact that you see ng-app equal auction over here, it means that somewhere the module auction was created. Where is it? Somewhere in the JavaScript. See? I have in the JavaScript file, say this is index.html file, and this is maybe some JavaScript file, which we are using over here. This is my code that I wrote, my application code. So I'm adding Angular and I'm adding my file, which is down there. So what do I do in that JavaScript file? I declare the variable auction. And I created a new object of type module. See this? The fact that I added square brackets empty means that I'm creating it for the first time. So from now on, there is something called auction, right? Only because of that, I have a right to say that the whole HTML in this case, it could have been one div, is controlled by the module called auction. What does it mean? Controlled by the module. Let's look at this auction. It's not just an empty module. We already have something else in there. We already assigned a controller to this module. So this module has a controller that goes by the name we decided. I gave it a name. I decided to call it index controller. Right? So I'm defining a controller for this module. So if something happened on the screen, if we need to interact, we will need to refer to this controller by this name. So what does the syntax mean? I am assigning a controller to the auction. What is a controller? A JavaScript function. Where is that function? It's right there, over here, highlighted. I'm saying index. I want to create a controller which is actually this function. What do we do in this function? By the way, take a look. We are saying to Angular, dear Angular, please inject into the controller a reference to the scope object. So the variable will be that I will create will live inside this scope. So Angular automatically will inject the reference to the current scope in memory using this Angular variable $scope. As I said, there is another variable global scope, $root scope, I believe it's called. And this one is scope. So the current scope, wherever this code is executed, will be injected. And we are saying, on this scope, I want to create an object, I decided to call it model in this case, which will have one property message with a value initial message. Remember? Who still remembers? I highlighted this stuff in curly braces. Who still remembers? What do we call this in JavaScript? What do we call this notation in JavaScript for creating objects? No. Try harder, guys. Try harder. You know this. No. Where's the function? I'm talking about the fragment between curly braces that is highlighted. This curly and this curly in between. No. 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 What happened, guys? Nobody knows? I told you last week. I swear I told you last week. I know that this is an object, but what kind of, if you remember from the last session, last week, there are different ways of creating object instances. And one of them is called no, callback is about a function. Yes, finally. And the champion of today's lesson is Anders. Anders, very good. At least one person paid attention last week to the training. It's an object literal notation. Object literal. Curly brace, property, colon, not equal sign, but colon, value. The property can be a regular member variable, or it could be a function, which will become a method. Just check the slides from the first lesson. And look, remember there is an example with Julia Roberts. I was explaining object literal. It's important to understand and know. Based on object literal notation, JSON was created. Why? Because JSON notation is very close, the syntax is very close to object literals in JavaScript. I highly recommend you guys to re-watch the recording of each lesson, at least once. I mean, younger people can do it only once, but older guys like me should do it 2-3 times, because we don't remember anymore. We forget. I assume that this group is younger, but we have only one young guy, and his name is Andras. Everybody else is old. It's time to retire, guys. If you don't remember, programmers must remember. Do something, get some pills, drink something, maybe get some fresh air. I don't know, whatever works for you. You must remember. Or rewatch the video. I don't remember anymore. I rewatch. I do it twice. Okay, so the JavaScript code that I wrote creates a variable at auction as a module. And to that module, we assign a controller, which we want to be known to the world as index controller. And what is this controller is doing? It just creates an object on the scope named model, and that model has inside one attribute called message with a value initial message. That's it. Who is using this controller and where? Look at this section now. Body section. If you want to specify, so what this HTML knows? A, that it's an application or a module called option, and B, we want to say that this section, body, from body to slash body, is controlled by a controller, which is known by name index controller. It's another directive from Angular called ng controller. This is how you specify. This is how you specify that I want a controller with a particular name. Coming back, or actually no, going forward, you know English is my second language. Going forward to the workflow number 2, you will create a module for the home page with featured products in your option, which will have its own controller, and you will create a piece. I say a page, it's not a page, it's a div, and you will create a div for search products, right? And it'll have its own control. So you have 2 modules. Well, each of them will have its own controller. Each of them will have its own model. Each of them will load its own JSON. See? See the picture? Getting better? Alright, so what do we got? ng controller will be controlling the body. Nice. What is a model for this particular text? Text field, input field. Ooh, model.message. So now this section knows my controller is in the controller, right? And it created apparently the model that is known as this. It's right there, right? Also, what you want to say. So this is a binding, right? Binding from view to the model, and this is a binding from the model to the view. Now we are saying, I want over here, I want to display the message, and I want to apply a filter. In this case, we are using a standard filter that exists in Angular called uppercase. So show me the data in the uppercase. That's all. So see, now our example is a little bit more complicated in that it has a module, a controller, and a model. In America, people say module. In Great Britain, they would never say module, right? Because we know how to speak English. But we speak American way. At least I am trying for the last 23 years. Questions? How does one know that uppercase is a filter? I don't want to be rude, but there is a special abbreviation for that. Read the manual. Angular, filters, Google, and you know. Also add, you can create your own filter. You can create a function, name it whatever you want. You will have an example at the end of this slide deck. You can create your own function, give it a name, and use your function over here as a filter. Controller. What do we got in time? Okay, let me do quickly controller, and then we'll take a break. Controller. Controller handles user interactions, right? We already stated that. And it creates a model on the current scope. I want to tell you again, scope is like a little bit fuzzy area. It's not that easy to understand. For today, I'm just giving you short examples. I believe next week, Anton will spend like at least half an hour just explaining scopes. So just bear with me, just learn little by little. So controller will create a model on the scope object. If there is a routing in use, By the way, you may use routing module or you may not use routing module. It's up to you. There are two different ways of arranging routing between the content on the page. So if you are using routing, you will specify who is the controller for this particular piece of HTML. I mentioned this in the beginning of the lesson. Controller has no reason to touch a view. Controller reacts on the actions from the view, but controller never directly updates anything on the view. Controller, she updates the model. Model is bound to the view. And one, you can have multiple controllers. Great. Let's look at this slide. Let's start it from the bottom. I have a div over here, somewhere in HTML, the area, which I want to be controlled by a controller, by AngularJS controller. So I'm saying over here, dear div, your ng controller is called main controller. I decided to give it this name. Now I'm saying over here. Another list, right? I want to display a list of items. UL is a standard HTML tag. UL is a bunch of LIs. So I want to use another directive called ngRepeat. ngRepeat, it's a loop in Angular. Like for each loop in Java, right? For variable in array list, for example, do something. This is how you would write this in Java. For each loop. So this is the same thing technically. You're saying, try not to look in the top box for now. Just read the HTML. So what do you see? There is a div with another list inside. This div is controlled by a controller known as main controller, which means that we are in a scope that can access stuff created in the main controller. And what is that stuff? Ooh, I see something called awesome things. Awesome. So what? Take a guess. You're a Java programmer. It's easy to guess. If this is a loop and ngRepeat is a loop, it's a variable. Name it anything you want. For a variable called a thing in a collection called awesome thing. What I want to do? I want to, using binding, I want to display it right there. So technically, a list item in this unordered HTML list will show you one element of the awesome things. So now let's go and see what's happening inside the controller. This is a JavaScript function. Use strict. I mentioned it in the first lesson. It's just a little stricter requirements for the JavaScript. In ECMAScript 6, it'll be a must. At this point, you have to use semicolons at the end of the lines. What else? You cannot use global variables. There are little things here and there which are a bit more stricter, so hopefully people will make less mistakes. So use strict. So now, what do we have? This is immediately invoked function or self-initialized function, right? See? Parentheses, last lesson. Remember? Anyone? Parentheses to encapsulate the code in the object, and this pair of parentheses instantiated in memory right away. This is my code. It's not Angular. So what I do here, I wrote a function which inside what it does is I'm saying I want to write a function, but please Angular inject the reference to the current scope, because I'll be doing something on that scope. It's a callback. Angular will give you the scope object right away. You don't need to instantiate it. And then on this scope, you will declare an array called awesome things, which will contain 3 elements. HTML5 boilerplate with 1 string. What else? AngularJS and Karma. Karma is a testing framework. It's not what you may think. So what we are saying that the div area is handled by main controller. Main controller is over here. It's a variable inside that I created on the scope. No, not right. Sorry. The main controller is the variable that I created in my JavaScript. Main controller is a function, is a controller, right? But inside, I'm sorry, it knows that, not it knows, you know, it created an array which will be served as a model, technically. So what we do over here, we are executing on the same scope as this piece, right? Why? Because we said that ng controller is main controller. Main controller knows about this scope. Awesome things are created on this scope. So you can refer, right in HTML, you can refer objects that are known in this scope, in this neighborhood, so to speak. Awesome things is known in this neighborhood because we are in the same scope and it was created. Then in the loop, this code will repeat and you will see a list of items. HTML boilerplate on the AngularJS and Karma. So ng repeat is yet another Angular attribute that you learned. Which user interaction? I don't know if there will be any user interaction. In this particular case, the role of the controller was just to create a model. And do something with the model. And serve something when the need be. Over here there is no interaction. But if I will put a button, I could have put a button over here in the div. On the click on the button, I could have done this. But I don't need to do this. It's just initial creation of the list. The role of the controller in this case was to create a model. And check this out. We say our model is called, in this case I put store, it could be auction, it could be anything. I mean, whatever I want to call a module for this div. I'm saying, Angular, please give me the module named so-and-so. And for that module, I want to assign a controller that will go by this name, and it's represented by the variable main controller. So this kind of completes the whole thing. If this fragment is sitting in another fragment, or maybe if over here I will say ng-app is equal store, right? Then it'll know that this store has a controller. Again, one more time I want to repeat. When I'm calling module over here, I didn't specify the square brackets, which means that I'm assuming that somebody already created a module called store. This is not shown in this code, but apparently there was another JavaScript that created a module called store. And we attached this controller to that particular module. A thing is a variable. Like in Java, if you're writing Java for each loop. For example, customers. So you have a collection of customers. You would have written for parent customers see in customers, right? So that's the same thing. For a thing, it's like a variable custom, a variable C. In customers, do something. Besides scope, what other object can be injected? There's a bunch of objects that could be injected. In particular, one of them, which is a very popular one, is $HTTP. $HTTP. If you go back to this slide, over here, $HTTP. If I would need to make AJAX request to get JSON, I would need a reference to $HTTP. So just write a controller and say, oh, please give me the scope, comma, and I also want HTTP. Why? Because I'm planning to do some AJAX thing easily. So HTTP will be injected as well. $HTTP, sorry. All right. So what we will do now, we will do a break. We will do a break. It's 11:25. 15 minutes. 15-minute break. I have 26 minutes. Let's make it 14 to 40 minutes. A break to 40 minutes on the hour. Please explain more about the model. A model is a variable or variables. A model is a place where you store the data. That's all. You will be looking at in modules a bit more, but if you look at this slide, a module in this case is an object. So I guess you might need to read about the MVC model view controller in general, but a module is a place with data. Controller is something that is moving the data between the place, the storage, which is a model, data storage, and the view, always. So, for example, if you get the data from somewhere from the server side, you can put them in the model, array collection, in Java, array list, map, you name it. And then assume that whatever needs to be shown on the screen, on the UI, is sitting in the model. Just the data storage, nothing else. Model in the context of scope. Okay, model is an object or objects that are created in the scope. So scope is a visibility for the data. It's an area where the data is visible. So model is created on a particular scope. Sorry, Ed, I probably didn't understand. Didn't get your message correct. All right, so till the 40th, till in my case it's 11:40. You can look at my screen as well. Are you back, guys? Okay, let's continue. Scope. Scope, again, as I said, it's a hierarchy of objects in Angular. And scope is a place to share, you can say so, the data between the view and controller. The view can get access to the scope and the controller as well. There is one root scope variable that is always created immediately, and it can have children, so to speak. A child scope objects are created for controllers and directives. So when you were using controller in the previous slides, Angular would create a scope for the controller, give it to the controller. In that way, it was limiting the visibility. Who can see what? Next, you will, again, as I said, next week you will talk about scopes in detail. For now, it's all we need to know. Directives. You use already a bunch of different directives today. And the whole idea of a directive is to enhance, to add new features to standard HTML or CSS. So UI decomposition. So basically you can create separate fragments and name them. You can give some names to the directive. You can create your own directives, by the way. We have been using Angular directives, several of them. But you can create your own directives, and you can build an application and using these directives as kind of reusable components. Some directives you can you can write, if you will be writing custom directives, which will be covered later in the course. You can write them to be attributes to HTML components, like we use today, Angular attributes, which were HTML. Angular attributes, which were HTML. No. Angular directives that were used as HTML attributes. Attributes of the element. Element is whatever we put in the angle brackets. Attribute is a property of that element, one of them. So you can create directives that will also be used as attributes of HTML, or you can create directives that will be used as HTML elements. Actually, this slide is about that. So you can create your own. So these are the Angular attributes. By the way, in the past, when HTML5 spec was released, they said we are adding a feature that anybody can add a new attribute to HTML element as long as it starts with data dash. So by doing that, they allow you to create extendable, so to speak, HTML component. Many frameworks started to use it, and Angular as well. So in some cases, in some examples, you may see data in GApp, and in some examples in GApp. Angular now allows you to not even mention this prefix. Or you can create your own directive that can look as if it is an HTML tag, but it's going to be your code. Or you can create, if I remember correctly, the property is called restrict. When you will be declaring a new directive for Angular, you can specify where this directive can be used, as what, in which way. And you can, over there, you can say as an attribute of the HTML element, as an element, or even inside the cascading style sheets. you can define a class, name it somehow, and use it inside the CSS. So it was a top-level overview of all these major players, and now you will be working hands-on. Hands-on, it's a walkthrough number 2. This walkthrough is pretty long. You will be working on it like 20 minutes or so. But before you even start working on it, I want to explain you what are you going to do during this walkthrough and what techniques you are going to use in this walkthrough. So first of all, the goal remains the same. You want to have 2 pages for the online auction. One page is feature product, second page is a search product. Same page. But during this walkthrough, if you will finish it in 20 minutes, great. If no, you will continue at home, or we already provided you a solution. And I will do an overview of the code. So in the walkthroughs, in the handout, there is walkthrough number 2. It's over here. It's a starting point. It's a starting point. We prepared for you different elements, and you need to fill them in with the code using instructions that we send you in a separate HTML file. Again, one more time, I want to remind you. This morning, I resend you the instructions for walkthrough number 2. I made 2 small corrections in the code, and I want you to use the latest version of instructions for the walkthrough number 2. So we prepared for you the structure of the application, some scripts which are empty so far, but I want to do a quick overview before you even start working on this walkthrough. But you're gonna have to fill in the stuff. But first, let's take a look at the structure of the application. This is a main page for your auction application. And somewhere over here, line 42. I mean, of course, there is a header, there is a footer, but in between, in the middle, there is nothing in this version. Again, if you don't want to work hard as everyone else, you can pick at the W2 solution, which has all these steps done. But what's the point? What's the point? Who are you kidding? So the container class in the middle, lines 42 to 45 is empty. So initially this auction page has only header and a footer. In the middle is exactly that area that's supposed to be handled by Angular, that's supposed to change, right? First we see feature product, then we see search product. So that's the goal, basically, what you want to do in here. Now, speaking of the rest, as I told you before, we will have views in Angular. Will be like fragments of HTML that should be placed over here, either one or the other in our case. Views are sitting in the folder view. Home view, it's a home page, right? And it's marked with steps from the instructions that you see in that HTML file for walkthrough number 2. So you're gonna have to put stuff in there. And in the search page, some stuff is already there, but something you will need to put. So views are fragments of the page. Now, controllers, accordingly, home view will have home controller. At this point, it's empty. In solution, it's ready. It's up to you. But you will have to put some code in there. What this code should do, this code should invoke a service to read JSON, correct? JSON is sitting in the same place as it was last week. Product features JSON, same data. We don't change anything in that regard. The home controller is empty. The home controller needs to talk to a product service, which is empty. Product service should do what? What do you think? Let me repeat again. The home view will talk to home controller. Home controller will talk to product service JavaScript, and product service should do what? Type it in, please. What do you think? What do you think we should put in the product service? Excellent. Very good. Right. It should read JSON, or someone put it, it should not render data. No, not render. Let me go back here to the diagram. The service is reading the data from somewhere. The service is here, guys. On this diagram, I showed you that controller changes the model, but nobody stops controller invoke a service as well, make some AJAX request, get some data from a remote server, or, as in our case, from the JSON files, put them in the model, and model will automatically update them. Something like this. Now, the other, actually, let's leave it at that. So, the home controller will need to invoke something on the product service, and that something will read JSON. When you will finish doing the homework, the walkthrough, I will do a quick code review of the completed walkthrough number 2. So you will have a pretty good understanding on how to do that. And even if you will not be able to finish it, some of you will finish it. I know it from the past in 20 minutes. Then you can finish it at home, or you can pick over here in the W2 solution, which is working and ready. Now let's one more thing, if I need to make a comment before you will start. I already mentioned it, I don't know if you noticed, that there are different ways of arranging navigation between all these fragments of HTML that we show. One of them is called routing, which is not being used in this walkthrough. No, we are not using NGRoute. What we are using a different method. We are using two directives. One of them is called init, and the other one is called include. Actually, ng init and ng include. So what are they? Think of it this way. ng init knows how to initialize a variable on the current scope. So if you will find a way, say this is home, right? And in the middle, over here in the container, line, what am I looking at? Where is that container? Oh, sorry, over here, in the index HTML. See, this is an empty container, right? So one of the way to arrange routing, and what is routing? Routing means put in this container, which is empty, one thing or the other thing, or the third or the fourth, or whatever. This is routing, right? Based on the user action, we want to change the content of the portion of the screen. So one of the way is ng init. We can initialize, meaning assign an initial value to something, so when the page comes up, at least we have something. With ng include, we can change this variable. Initially, we assign a fragment A, home page fragment, and then we want to change it using ng include. So ng include allows you to download and display an HTML fragment, maybe for another page, right? So initially, using ng init, we initialize the variable and show one piece, and the HTML templates are the same technically as in the templating engine handlebars that I explained on Thursday, right? So ng init assign initial fragment, and then using ng-include, maybe change it and apply a different template. So that HTML, so this is your starting point, which I just showed you, empty places which you need to fill with data, with the code. What code? Read this HTML file. It's pretty long, but it has instructions on each step in your way. So now it's 56 minutes. At 16 minutes, we will stop wherever you are, and I will review the solution. But you please try to do your best to finish this walkthrough number 2. When you are done, let me know. I will put my camera on pause, but I'm around. So if anybody wants to write something in the chat, please do so. I'm here. Guys, did anyone reach step number 7 in the homework? In the walkthrough, sorry. Okay, very good. Okay guys, one more minute and then we'll do a quick review. Okay guys, a couple of guys managed to do the whole walkthrough. And it's very, very nice. I understand that 20 minutes is maybe not enough, but aren't you impressed with what you could have done, with what you could do in 20 minutes? It's a lot. What if you spend 2 hours, even for 2 hours, creating such an application? It's very impressive. All right, let me do a quick review of the code. First of all, let me run in the solution, W2 solution, open in the browser, and add the application. Search, add the application. So basically, this area is a view that is shown in the container, in that container, line 42, remember in index.html? That's the area. Initially, it showed the other part, but let me explain you some major points, so you will, at least you will read it better at home. First of all, let me reiterate. Take a look at my screen. This is a container in the index.html. I want again to reiterate, we did not use ng routing in this example. The third guy, very good. So we are showing you one way of replacing fragments in HTML using ng init and ng include. Later on, you will redo the thing with routing. But let's look at this example. The main idea is pretty simple. We declare a variable called current view, right? Current view initially is home, and it's a variable. It's like a flag. If we are in the home page, the current view value will be home. If we are in the search page, the value will be search. And basically, we are building the URL of the fragment of the HTML to show right here in the line 40 by concatenating views, name of the directory, right there, views, the value in the current view, which is home, .html. So, ng include, we are saying to the index.html, please include right here in this div views slash home slash views slash home .html, which is right there. Correct? We are saying please insert that piece over here. If the user will click on the button search, see this search? Line 27. ng click, it's a directive for processing click event by Angular. What are we saying here? They click, we are changing the value of the current view to search. So ng include will understand now I need to include views slash search.html, which is this page. That's the mechanism for switching. Next, let's see some other things. Now, we are looking at this fragment home HTML, which is a view, right? It's a view. So what do we have in here in home HTML? It's a div, and we are saying your controller, dear div, your controller will be home controller. And this is an alias, just an alias. We are saying the actual name of the home controller is this, home controller. But I want to refer to it in the code using this shorter notation CTRL. So from now on, any function or method that exists inside home controller you can call like CTRL dot something. And I'm sure there is some example. Or, for example, in this case, list, another list, right? Another list. Which this fragment looks very similar to handlebars, right? To handlebars. So what do we do here? We are saying ng repeat over here. It's a loop, right? For the variable product in some collection known as ctrl.products repeat. And as I explained you on Thursday, with handlebars, it's an HTML template that will be inserting elements. For example, product.sum. This product is a loop, right? At any given time, the product variable points at one and only one product, which has property like thumb, title, right? Remember that? Description. It's here. Right? So all that is coming from where? From JSON. How do we get JSON? We'll get there. For now, just remember that view, this view which is which is home HTML, in a loop will ask the controller to put the data in here. I mean, the templating engine that comes with Angular, which is very similar to handlebar, will insert elements in the loop. Fine. Now let's look at the CTRL, which is nothing else but home controller. Home controller is sitting in the controllers. Scripts consists of a bunch of things. One of them is home controller in the folder controllers. What do we do here? We declare a variable home controller, and we are saying it's going to be a function. We are assigning a function to this variable. The reason why this variable is named with capital H is what? Who remembers what functions do we name with capital letters? Constructor, correct, constructor functions. But do I use new somewhere here? No, but Angular does. Angular will inject the controller, and Angular somewhere inside will use new, create an instance of it for us. So let's take a look. What is this home controller? It's a function. Of course, it should be a function. It's a function that takes a variable product service. And what does it do? First of all, it needs to remember the reference to this object. The thing is that in JavaScript, the variable this is not as straightforward as in Java. In Java, we 100% know what this is pointing at, always. In here, it's not always. Why? Because it depends on how this object was called. Was it called from a static function? Maybe it was created by a new keyword. Maybe it is a callback. Maybe this callback will be invoked from some other object. and then this will be pointing at something else. So the standard technique in JavaScript is, if you know this, which is currently pointing at the right object, remember, store it somewhere in the variable. So what we do here, we are saying immediately, let's remember what is this, in a different variable, underscore this, and we create there an array called products. On that object in JavaScript, you can attach any attribute you like. The array is empty at this point, correct? What do we need to do to populate this array with products? We need to read JSON somehow, correct? Who is reading JSON? We want to separate it in a separate function called service, product service. We want to say, we know that service is the area that's supposed to be interactive with the backend, so to speak. It's supposed to be making some HTTP requests, for example. So what we are saying, I want to call, I'm just reading the code out loud. Line 8, I'm saying on the product service, which is passed to the controller, I'm saying I want to call a method getProduct, and let's take a peek at getProduct. So whenever you want to do some HTTP request using Ajax, you are declaring a function in Angular. You're declaring a function and you are stating in the parameter HTTP, $HTTP. You're saying to Angular, dear Angular, I am planning to make Ajax calls from this function. Please inject HTTP object in this function. So we remember this argument in the variable. It's a simple thing like we do in any constructor. Argument is assigned to the member variable of the object. And this is a registration. We are registering the dependency that is needed. We are registering the dependency. In this case, we are saying that HTTP is needed for me. Please inject it into this service. You will be studying what inject is in details next week. But for now, or maybe week after. But for now, just keep it at this. You are saying that I want you to inject the HTTP service for me. And then we define something on the prototype. On the first lesson I told you, I mentioned that briefly, but I told you if you don't want to have code duplicated, don't declare it inside the object, because every instance would duplicate this highlighted piece of code. So where should I declare it then? Declare it on the prototype, because prototype is the area which will be shared by all instances of the current type. So that's why we are saying we don't want to do it like this. We don't want to do it like this. I don't want to do it like this. I want to do it on the prototype of the product service. No, actually, I was wrong. I said something wrong. I don't want to create an object inside the product service. Let me put it this way. So what I do, I create an object literal. I'm using an object literal notation on the prototype. And that literal will have what? It'll have two methods. One method is called getProduct. Again, guys, remember the object literal notation. Name of the property, colon, value. So in this case, it happens to be a function. It could be any regular attribute on the object. So our object product service will have now a method called getProduct. And what this method do? It'll read a particular JSON file, getProduct. And the second method that we declared in the object product service is the other Ajax call that is reading another JSON file called product search JSON. Now let's talk about the Ajax, how these calls are implemented in Angular. As I said, the main thing is $HTTP. They're the object that has a bunch of methods to do all HTTP requests. You can do get, put, post, delete. In this case, we are using get. So on that object get, we are saying HTTP get request to this particular URI. Folder data, product, feature, JSON. And this is an interesting notation. This notation will be standard in ECMAScript 6, which is called promise or promises. A promise is a concept that is used in asynchronous programming. What it means? It means I want to get the data from this particular data source. I don't know how long it's going to take for you, dear friend, to get the data to read. Maybe 200 milliseconds, maybe 500 milliseconds, I don't know. And I don't want to know. You promise me to get the data. And what do I want to do after you fulfill the promise? Then you put then. This dot is a continuation of it's a chaining of the methods. We are calling get on the $HTTP object, dot then. We are saying perform the get. I don't know how long it's going to take, but when you are done, then execute for me this function. The thing is that when get finishes, it gives you a response object, HTTP response object. We take it as a parameter, and the data response object has a whole bunch of different stuff, including all these different HTTP headers and parameters, attributes, sorry. But somewhere inside there is the data, the payload, so to speak. So, and it is represented by the variable data. So I'm saying, whenever you're done reading JSON, please call for me this function, give me a response object, and I will extract the data from it and return it. So technically, whoever calls the method getProduct will get this piece, the data from the HTTP response. And again, coming back to the controller, this is exactly what we do over here. We are saying get products from me. Again, we are talking about chain and promises. Get products will invoke Ajax. How long it's going to take, we don't know. But at some point, it will return us the data. So what I'm saying is then, whenever the data comes back, take the data and assign it to the array. So initially the array was empty, but after this line number 9, the array is populated. Is populated with the data. Array is populated with the data, and the home page, which uses HTML templating, right? And the home page will do ng repeat for this array. See, these are bindings technically. Initially, the array was empty, but now it's populated using JSON and Ajax request. It's changed, so the whole machine starts working, and the binding gets updated, repeat is being called. And this is how we see the data. That's all. I don't have much time, guys, on that, but I hope you understand the idea. Just do it slowly, rewatch the video, and then repeat it yourself. The more you type, the better, because hands remembers better than the brain. Okay, let's move on. A couple of slides real quick. I don't want to spend much time because first of all, you don't have much time. But second of all, you will go into detail coverage of all these routing and filters and everything. So routing. Routing would be a different way of achieving the same goal, and you will do it in the future walkthroughs. But just some quick ideas before you will be studying next week in detail. Routing represents a service. And the thing is that there is a concept called hash. When you see a hash in the URL, it means, and something after the hash, it means don't make a request to the server. This hash something is somewhere locally in the web page. This is standard HTML. So technically we want to enable deep linking. What is a deep linking? Deep linking means I want to be able to refer not to the entire page, but to a certain state of the page. So deep linking is supported as a standard. It's supported in HTML5. And basically, you may have a web page that could be in different states, right? And if you want to open a page with a particular state, maybe some tab is open or something, then you use deep linking. Deep linking is specified after the hash. History API is in HTML5, and even you develop your application, you may create these deep links, so they are bookmarkable, and the page can be opened at any particular with any particular state. Now, there is another concept called hash bank. This is a link, guys. If you want to read about it, please do so. But I will just tell you just a couple of words so you understand when you will be reading. It's called hash bank. This was an idea for search engines, to help the search engines. The thing is that all these crawlers that are trying to index pages, they're running around, all these internet bots are running around all day and all night trying to index all pages. And whenever they see this combination, found, exclamation point, they understand that this is an Ajax page, which may have no content. But these guys who developed this page, they prepared for me so-called snapshot, HTML snapshot. They prepared, it's not a fake page, but a page to help the crawlers to index it. So there is a special mechanism, they will read the fragment after this hash bank, which will give them, to whom? To the crawlers, a full HTML page with the content, with the text that would help to index the page. So routing supports all that as well in Angular. Basically, what you will need to do, you will need to ask for routing support separately. You will need to include the script route-angular.js in your code, and then you will need to specify a provider. You will need to say, I want the routing. It's a special way. A provider is a special way to say to Angular that I want to configure routing at a configuration phase. There are two phases in Angular. One of them is runtime phase, and the other one is configuration phase. Configuration phase is happening even before the application runs, so you can configure stuff. And just a quick glimpse on how you would do the same thing that you've done in walkthrough number 2, but with routing. With routing, you would need to specify, you would need to create something like this, a route provider. You would need to say module option. I want to configure for option. I want to configure what? I want to configure routing, right? And in that routing, you declare a function. You declare a function that is pretty simple. Look like this. You're saying, if the URL has this fragment, this pattern, you are expected to see one HTML. Actually, to be honest with you, it should be home HTML, right? To be consistent. What do we call it? Home and search, right? It should be home HTML. If the URL has this fragment /search, I want you to display search HTML, right? So basically, in the router, you're saying this is a view for you when the URL has just / the root page. Then this is your view and this is your control. Let me call it. Why we call it like this? Let me, for consistency, call home controller. Right? And if the URL has search, then we want to say that we want to open search HTML as a view, and accordingly, a search controller should be handling the interactions and work with the model. Otherwise, default, redirect to / means home, so this is how it works. Again, it's a very high overview, no worries, you will have a chance to do this next week. Filters, I already mentioned that, I already showed you an example. Filter is for massaging some data before showing them on the view. Like in this example, we have an array somewhere in JavaScript, array called names. We want to display it somewhere in HTML. I'm saying display over here an array names, which has John, Mike, and Kate. But I want you to apply a filter. In this case, a filter is the name of my functions that I wrote. It's not something that comes with Angular. So what is this function? I can register a function with a name join data. And what this function does, it takes two parameters, array and a separator. Array and a separator. And what we do, we call a standard JavaScript function join to take all elements from the array and join them using this delimiter. In this case, it's comma. Basically, when you create a filter, filter must have one argument. Must. What is one argument? Is the one that is written before the vertical bar. But if you want more arguments, go ahead and do this. After this colon, you can put more arguments. Accordingly, the first argument, that is a must for filter, will come as an array over here. And this is the second argument, will come as a separator to our function. So this is an example of writing a filter function. Why do you need to define an Angular service instead of using it as a JavaScript object? Just to separate code clearly. So we have a folder services, and in there we declare JavaScript that are supposed to be communicated with the external world. That's all. You can write everything in one big JavaScript file if you want, of course, but it's nicer. That's all. It's not a must. Identifying the view. The routing module over here tells us the views, and on the Angular has a special directive ngView that you can mark a fragment as a place where to put stuff. So you're saying to the Angular, you have this routing, this is your controller, this is what to show. But the question is where to show. Right? So on the main page, you can identify some container, that this is where the stuff will be shown that Angular will get for you. Okay, navigate the route. I'll skip this slide. You will do it next week. And what I will do, repeat the join part of the filter. Remember one thing, that when you write a filter, you must provide an argument. If you wrote a function join data just to do something with the names, if that function wouldn't need any other arguments, No need to write anything here. And of course, you don't need to write a couple of arguments there. You could have written join data, and automatically this first object, which is array in this case, would be given as an argument to the function. But if you think that you need more arguments, like in this case, I want to know the separator or a delimiter when I will be building a string, then you write your function, you register it as a filter on the module. The module option will have a filter that will go under the name join data. That's why we use join data over here. What this filter is, a filter is a function that needs two arguments, an array and a separator. First argument will be always taken as a value to the left of the vertical bar. The second, or maybe third or fourth, will be taken from this list that you will specify. And this fat arrow means just a single line function, just use it. Array has a function join. It's a standard function on JavaScript arrays. Okay, guys, I want to talk about the tools. I will give you super duper brief overview on the tools, but this Thursday you will be doing the walkthrough number 3 with Anton. And the whole idea, the whole goal is to show you the build process that we are using. It's great that we have this excellent IDE called IntelliJ IDEA, or maybe some other that you like, but how do we work in the real world? In Java, you know the whole bunch of different tools such as Ant, Maven, continuous integration services, and so on. You know how to write a script to automate the build. You know in Java what has to be done to specify dependencies. If one jar needs another jar, you know all that in Java. In JavaScript, there is also a bunch of tools, and I will spend 15 minutes before we say goodbye to do a quick overview of these tools. What we are using in this training, and you will be using in this training in walkthrough number 3, and Anton will spend an hour on Thursday. He will be doing walkthrough number 3 in front of you using all these tools. In prerequisite I sent you yesterday, you need to install all of them. When you will be installing all these tools, make sure that you have admin rights on your computers. On Windows, if it's not a work computer, you definitely have it. If it's a Mac or Linux, you need to do all this installed under the sudo account. So, Node.js. Many of you probably know that Node.js is a framework that you can use to write desktop applications in JavaScript. But this is not only a framework. And we are not going to use Node.js as a framework in our training. We are developing on the client side. But what happened was Google Chrome includes a JavaScript engine. And developers of Google Chrome, from Google of course, they managed to extract this JavaScript engine, V8, and use it separately on the desktop. So they say you don't have to write JavaScript inside the browser and run, sorry. And of course they've added some stuff, so now from JavaScript in Node.js you can, for example, access files. Since it's not in the browser, you can do that. You can use TCP, you can use any other protocols and so on. But what else is Node.js? Node.js is a runtime. It's like you have Java and you have JVM, right? What I'm saying to you now, that a lot of people use Node.js as a JVM, so to speak, as a runtime environment. They don't use framework, they don't write server-side application, but they definitely use it to install and run different tools. And this is what we're going to do. So we will use it as a runtime. That's why you install Node.js. When you install Node.js, you also install another thing called Npm, Node Package Manager, which is used by millions of JavaScript developers for what? To install packages. What kind of packages? Packages for developers. For example, we will be using Npm and Bower, Grunt. These are special tools for developers. All of them can be installed using Npm. So just remember that npm is for installing packages that developers use for development. Next, Yeoman. Yeoman is a nice tool that is a scaffolding tool that creates your initial structure of the project. Yeoman comes with a bunch of different generators. They can create an initial structure for Angular, jQuery, XJS, what you name it. So you don't start the project from scratch. You're saying to this Yeoman, you're saying, Yeoman, please create for me an initial structure and download all the required packages that I might need for this particular framework. And Yeoman will do it for you. Bower. Bower is also a package manager. And you may say, why do I need npm as a package manager and Bower as a package manager? The thing is that Bower is a different package manager. Bower is used for packages that your application need for the front end. For example, you can say Bower, I need Angular, and I need jQuery, and I need Bootstrap. See, these are the libraries that are used for the front-end development. They are not developers' tools like npm can download for you. They are front-end libraries or frameworks that you will use. So what all these tools have in common? You run them on the command line. And if you can run them on the command line, you can automate it. For example, in Java world, you'd be using what? Ant, Maven, Gradle to write scripts to automate build and deployments, correct? In JavaScript, an equivalent by the functionality tool is called Grunt. So Grunt is a tool that will run sequence of tasks, and eventually, hopefully, it will build everything without any errors and put it in the folder that you want. All right, so let's do a little bit more, one after the other. Node. I already mentioned that. I will skip this slide. Node is a framework and is a runtime. There are literally thousands. People create different packages for different reasons, and there's more than 50,000 packages already that can be used by the npm. npm, as I said, Node Package Manager. As soon as you install Node, you already have npm. And in the handouts, in the prerequisite, I told you that you need to install it, and then you need to, sorry. Node, you need to check that you have it. See, it prints the version. Or npm. You need to see that you have it installed. Or Bower. I have it. So you need to install all these tools on the command line. And if you do, then of course you can write a grunt build script that is using all these, maybe npm to download something, maybe Bower to download some libraries with dependency, and so on. Maybe move some files around, so grunt will do that. But npm is loading. How npm knows what to load? And starting from now, there will be some similarity. How Maven knows what to load? Maven has POM XML, right, which describes your project. Same thing here. Something should be describing the project. Otherwise, npm doesn't know that you need Bower, for example, or Grunt. So how to do that? I'll skip this part. No, let me not skip the part. So how do you say to npm what to install? Of course, you can say to the npm, install for me a particular package, like grunt.ts. If you will say like this, npm will install it in the current directory where you are for this project. If you want to install it, some package once, so it will be available for all your projects, you add the -g, meaning install it globally. This is how you can install one separate package manually. Or what else you can do? You can create a file called package.json. In that package.json, you can specify all dependencies that you want. You can say that my project is called option. This is its version. There are dependencies for deploying during the runtime. We don't need anything. And there are the dependencies that we need for development stage. So I need grunt. I need grunt concurrent, and I need load grunt task. How do I know that? I need to read documentation for grunt. What are the versions? I can specify exact version, like the last line. I need load grunt task of the version 0.2.1. In some cases, I don't want to specify the exact version. Why? Because I may have different components in the system. One of them needs maybe 0.2.1 and the other 0.2.2. So I can specify what we call reasonably close. So there is a tilde sign, which means something around 0.2 or 4.1. Technically it means in between this and maybe 0.5. Grunt, we are saying, in this case we are saying it has to be definitely greater than 0.4.2. So basically you can use npm either by specifying what you want or by running it in a directory which has package.json. Basically the configuration of your project. Now, so npm is for installing development tools. Now, for your application, for the front end, we are using these tools: Yeoman, Grunt, and Bower. Yeoman is a scaffolding tool. As I said, you use it once per project. You create a project. You want to start working on Angular project, so you use Yeoman and you specify Yeoman Angular, for example. I will not read you this slide. You can read it on your own. There are different generators for different libraries and frameworks, so you can start creating a new project. You can see it over here. You can say, obviously, I assume that you have Yeoman installed, and then you say yo space Angular. You open up a directory, empty directory, and you say yo Angular. It will start working, downloading stuff. It may take several minutes, and then boom, you have the directory structure recommended by Angular team, how to split the project into directories and subdirectories. After that, you don't need Yeoman. After that, just work. Bower. Again, Bower is a package manager. What do you want to use? I want to use maybe Bootstrap in my project and jQuery and Angular. You also can configure it. So now you use npm to install Bower, right? Again, npm is for installing developers' tools, which it is. Bower is a developer tool. Then you will be running Bower, and Bower will be installing libraries for your application. Very similar idea. There is a configuration file called bower.json, where you define what you need for your application. And then, if you want to use configuration from bower.json, you can just go in that folder and say Bower install. Bower will read bower.json and install everything with all dependencies that are needed, that are specified in there. If you want to install any particular application library, you just write it manually, Bower install, and then say what you want. If you want to install a particular thing and also automatically update the configuration file JSON, add these things for dependency or dev dependency. Add this thing on the command line, and not only the Bower will install what you ask, but it'll also automatically update bower.json, so next time you will just say bower install, and this little thing, like Angular resource in this case, will be a part of your configuration for the project. The question was, is Bower similar to require.js? Not in any shape and form. No. Bower is a tool to load libraries and frameworks that you need. Require.js is one of the libraries. How can a tool to load libraries can be compared with a library? No. You can use Bower to add require.js as a dependency to your project. And accordingly, the Bower JSON looks very similar. But if in the Npm JSON you had tools for developers like Grunt, right? Over here in the Bower configuration file bower.json, you have different things. This is my application. I need Angular. I need Angular route. I need Bootstrap, right? So this is basically what the Bower is for. Technically, the workflow goes like this. You use Npm, you use Bower, and use Grunt. Grunt is a build automation tool, right? So you will say to the Grunt, please run Bower for me. Bower will check the bower.json, will see what do I need. It will make sure that you have in this particular directory or in this particular computer all the dependencies of the right versions according to this file, bower.json. It'll bring them in. After that, Grunt will run other tasks, after we know that we have at least all libraries. So the whole idea is to automate build process. So Grunt will invoke Bower. And Grunt is a task runner or build automation tool, similar to Ant, maybe even Gradle. Again, you need to install it as a tool using Npm. Again, Grunt has a configuration file. How do you define the build of your application? You need to define it over here. On Thursday, Anton will go in detail, and he will open up a Grunt file, which you already have, by the way. This is a part of walkthrough number 3. If you want to try it on your own, go ahead and do it by all means, because we sent you instructions for walkthrough number 3. And walkthrough number 3 has already all that. It has package.json. It has Grunt file, the build script for this application, for the auction, right? It has bower.json. It tells what we need. So Anton will be going through this walkthrough number 3, which basically the main reason for this walkthrough is to introduce you to the tooling and to show you how the whole project can be built automatically. The application will be the same, I believe. We didn't change anything there. But it has testing, it has application. For example, Angular Mocks is a testing framework, and so on. So I'm not going to do all these other slides. There's not too many. Walkthrough number 3 we'll do with Anton. The homework is basically try to use ng-init and ng-include, refactor your auction application. You already have it, right? Now forget about it. Keep the structure, the main structure, with the header and the footer, like you did in walkthrough number 2. Right? And do these 2 pages. In the walkthrough number 2 today, basically you pretty much did a lot for the homework already. But we didn't finish the search page, I believe. Or we did finish the search page. Now, also, the homework number 2 assumes that we did walkthrough number 3. And you already know how to run all these Bower and everything. So if you want to complete homework number 2, you need to complete walkthrough number 3. So you need to do all that thing with Bower install and everything. Now, this walkthrough Number 3, I believe we are using routing in there, ng route and route provider. So now it's a bit different way of routing. You had this routing done with ng init and ng include in epoxy number 2, and now you want to replace them with ng routing. When you're done with that, you need to run grunt. So basically, the survey is, I would recommend you, if you cannot attend, then definitely watch it, because Anton will in detail cover all these tools for this application. That's all, guys. Do you have any questions for now? Any questions? No, you're tired. I am sure you are tired. All right, so thank you for coming and enjoy your weekend, the rest of your weekend, if you can. Or work, work, work. You're welcome. You are welcome. Everybody is welcome.